And hello, everyone. We are back to relive the greatness of our first podcast. We're back talking wrestling, and it's wrestling pay-per-views. Joining me is Chris, the Brained Patrick, Mike, the Hitman Powells, Chris, the Mankind Stanley, and I, of course, am Matthew, Jesus of Nazareth, Sokalski. He was a wrestler.
Chris, that was not even Mankind. That was Cactus Jack. Come on.
I get them all mixed up, man.
Jeez.
Hey, already off on a tangent, but remember the pay-per-view when they had no wrestlers, so they put Mankind in 3 times, but put him as Mankind.
He had 4 entrants in a Royal Rumble, I think, or 3.
And still didn't win.
Nope.
This was our idea. It was like, no, half of your roster is injured. That's why you're doing it. So today I wanted to revisit because I wanted to talk about the actual pay-per-views themselves. And I kind of got that idea because last night was Monday. It wasn't Sunday. I figured this out yesterday, but we got delayed. Sunday was Backlash, WWE Backlash. And on it had the greatest wrestling match ever.
Greatest.
And I said, I don't care to even watch it. I didn't even watch it.
Oh.
I couldn't tell you 5 of them.
I'm right there with you, man.
And I started going, well, let me talk about the pay-per-views. Have pay-per-views been ruined for me? And the first one that I remember chipping away, the chipping away of the armor, and I sent it out to you guys, was WCW Uncensored back in the 90s. And it's famous for Hogan and Savage fighting the entire Dungeon of Doom. No, let me see. I'll get you who the actual participants were in it.
Everybody.
What year was this?
It was
96.
It was right before he turned. It was right before Hogan became Hollywood Hogan.
Mega Powers reunited.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Those are my... Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
they put everyone in a Doomsday Cage match. What it was it 3 levels or 2 levels, Stanley?
It was 3.
It was 3 levels, and it was obviously not inspected for safety. And Hogan and Savage had to start on the 3rd level, and this is who they had to fight. Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Meng. Well, I can't ever say his name, right? Meng.
That's right, Meng.
Yeah.
You had it, yeah.
Do you mean King Haku? Is that what you're talking about?
The Barbarian,
King is.
Lex Luger, the Taskmaster, and they had to throw in Z Gangster, who was Zeus in No Holds Barred, and the Ultimate Solution, who was Jeep Swenson, who went on to be Bane in the Batman and Robin movie.
Mm-hmm.
They also named it after what Hitler's plan was to do to the Jews.
I was just going to say, that's what I know of that statement, and I was wondering if I thought you were going to swerve on me, Sokalski, and do like a World War II podcast or something.
Mike, I was 16 when this came out. And
Was World War II ruined for me?
It was fixed.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
sorry, guys. We're not talking about
Okay.
pay-per-views.
All right. Yeah.
Enjoyed WW2. Let's find out if it's ruined for me.
Oh, man.
Normandy. But I was 16 watching this, and not that I already, of course, was smart in the wrestling world. I knew what was going on. But this was one of the first times where I was like, this is fucking ridiculous, and I can't defend myself. Like, I can't defend this wrestling match to anyone.
And
It's
Matt, before we got onto this, I told you I was watching it just before we hopped on here, and to say now, I don't have words for what I just watched, honestly. As I said, the highlight of that whole match was Savage taking a panel off the scaffolding, running down the aisleway to the main ring in the center of the arena.
when you say the 3 levels, like war games, or were they stacked on top of each other?
They were stacked.
They were
War Games is cool. This was
Yeah.
not.
So Mike, it was, and then it was like regular like fencing
Mm-hmm.
on the floor. So like Flair and Arn Anderson are walking. The thing is sinking like this as they're walking. And they're like, all they could do is punch. That's the only wrestling moves you could do, right? So they punch each other and then they climb down. No one knows the rules of this match, right? So they climb down, they get to the second level, then they go through the third level, then they go to the ring and they have to pin someone in the ring. I swear to God, they're making this up as they go along.
Like,
There's a run-in by who, Stanley?
Booty Man, a.k.a. Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Who brings what weapon? What weapon do you need to fight these guys with?
He brings them 2 pans that you would use to cook your dinner at night.
Let's make sure we
2 frying pans.
Let's just make sure we use proper, respectful tones when we talk about Mr. Cutting and Strutting. Bruce Barber Beefcake, okay?
I'm not talking about Beefcake. I'm talking
not
about
going to
Booty
be a
Man.
podcast where we're just dogging one of the all-time greats, okay?
Yep. All right.
Hey, Mike, can you imagine paying? We've already paid $50 for this pay-per-view, and one of the one-on-one matches is Booty Man fighting Diamond Dallas Page for 16 minutes.
That would see it's pay-per-views like that where I will freely admit I do go through dry spells where it's like, hey, I haven't watched wrestling in quite some time. Let me tune in. And it's pay-per-views like that where it's like, yeah, that's totally fine that I stay away from wrestling for a little while and then I'll come back and okay, yeah, that's fine. Like, that's ridiculous.
So the weird thing in Jersey was your cable box. I didn't have the digital cable box in one of the TVs. It just went right to the TV. I think we had a digital one in the big room, and then like in my room, I had an old school like slide one. That was an old cable box that we never turned on. It was different levels of when a pay-per-view, like you could see the pay-per-view, like the scrambling wasn't that good. So like you could make out what was going on. I was going back and forth from this pay-per-view to see the Doomsday Cage match because I had to see it to believe it. And sure enough, it came through like well enough that I could watch it. And I remember being 16 going, this isn't happening. He didn't have a frying pan. It must be so scrambled. I must be hearing something else. And then I remember the next night or the week later or something, they did like a rebroadcast of some of it. And I went, holy shit. He was holding a frying pan.
And this wasn't novelty that wore off. Like, you see Hogan slam Andre. Back then it was like, oh, my God. You watch the match now, you're like, God, that was boring.
Mm-hmm.
This had no luster when it first came out.
No, not at
None of
all.
us fans were like, what the hell did we just watch? Really?
Not at all. I mean, and I think we got to the point where there was way too many pay-per-views. I mean, Mike, remember when we were in college? There was one every month.
I remember like they kind of like there was obviously we all know the Big Four,
mm-hmm.
and then it went to the one that I really remember being like the one that goes in between the Big Four was In Your House. It seemed like they had 8 In Your Houses a year at one point. Then they were like, well, we can't have them all the same name. We got to name them stuff like Survivor Series and SummerSlam, and then it never came back from that. It was like you said, there's one a month now. Basically.
I mean, it even got to a point where they were just naming the In Your House pay-per-views just after either factions or gimmicks of other wrestlers. We got Rock Bottom, you have D-Generation X, and it's just like you get to a point where it's just like, okay, can you slow down a little bit? I mean,
and I always had the issue of, and now the real issue I have with these pay-per-views is they build the pay-per-view, and I'm just going to use 2 wrestlers. I can't even think of 2 fucking wrestlers. Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman are going to fight in 3 weeks. Tonight on Raw, Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman are fighting.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't.
I've watched that match 3 times now. I'm okay. Yep. Now I'm going to watch it on the pay-per-view. I don't get it.
Oh, but Matt, but the matches ended in different ways.
Oh, that's right.
You had a tag match the second week with them with another person. You had it's just.
I only can think of, Mike can back me up on this. I can only think of The Simpsons when it's Malibu Stacy, but she's got a new hat. Like that.
Yep.
Did you guys ever hear about, Dusty Rhodes' pyramid planning when he wrote?
Pyramid, I hope.
It's not a pyramid scam. It's a full one, baby. No, he told the Rock and Roll Express back in the 80s and the Midnight Express, he goes, I'm going to put you on both sides of this pyramid. I'm going to build you up, but you will never face each other. You might cross paths and look at each other and get the crowd going. But once I put you over and the crowd knows you're strong, all of a sudden and then when he hit Racket and Ricky Morton with the racket, you had the hottest heels versus the hottest baby faces. Mm-hmm. And he says that's how, it's common sense.
It's about building. You got to build it.
Yeah, like if you want the Young Bucks to hit somebody with the super kicks, have them miss the super kicks or something happens, and then when you get to that pay-per-view, boom, they smack them with it and you get what you want. Mm-hmm. Like Matt says, it's like, oh, we're going to give you a cage match on Raw, and they're going to fight again in a regular match this Sunday for $50. I'm like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the two things that when I started to get older and okay, they're not doing these things that they used to do, which made wrestling good, is there's no subtleties. You can't think you saw something and it's not talked about. If something happened, the announcer, oh, he looked at so and so, and it's yeah, I saw it. You don't have to tell me everything. Mm-hmm. I know how to watch TV. I can see certain things and make sense of them. It's fine. And then the other thing they don't do is, does any mid-carder have a storyline? It's all set up for the main event. The last 2, maybe 3 matches. The first 2 or 3 matches, or what should be considered, because sometimes they split them up, there's no storyline. Mm-mm. Yeah, I remember watching pay-per-views way back in the day, and 2 guys fighting, no title, no this, no that. I knew what the storyline was because they spent time on the storylines. They don't do that for the mid-card stuff anymore.
Well, and the other problem that I can say, there was almost an exact point of WWE, and it was after WCW folded and ECW kind of folded in already. There was a point when all of a sudden in wrestling, some of the bad guys knew each other. None of the baby faces knew each other existed. They were in a wrestling league all by themselves. They didn't know there was other baby faces. There was no interaction with other baby faces. And the bad guys, they might know 2 other bad guys. So if there was no more run-ins, or if there was a run-in, it would be one person that would run in, and that's it. And there was no reactions to anything. Whereas in not just to kiss the Attitude Era's ass, because WCW did it too. When Flair was getting his ass kicked, people started screaming, "Where's Sting?" Or whoever, and there was that chance, hey, maybe some face is going to run out. When the NWO was around, it was like, hey, I know this guy, we're going to help each other out. Now, like Mike said, first of all, there's no storylines anyway. And every time that these wrestlers interact, you're like, why? Why are they even in the same building?
Yeah.
It's like
one thing. I'll give Vince Russo. I know he's not one that he's very polarizing, and he says bro too much. But one thing he did say that I agree with, he goes, everybody, he's like, bro. But he said everybody has the storyline. Even if you're the opening card or the go-home show, he goes, you need a storyline. Mm-hmm. And he says that's why the stress on him was so bad. He did everything. I'll give him that much. Yeah. He's done some stuff.
I would agree with him in that regard. I know the wrestling world hates Vince Russo. I don't hate him as much as I don't like him, but I certainly don't hate him as much as I guess the wrestling world wants me to, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
He did have some good ideas, and I appreciate that he was someone that was a fan and came in with that perspective and would tell Jim Cornette or Jim Ross. Maybe he didn't do it respectfully, but he would be like, no, you know what people want to see is this.
Yeah.
And sometimes he was right. Sometimes he was dead wrong. But I respect someone coming in from someone like me who would be like, no, you know what I would want to see? And then.
That goes to the typical argument where yes, it's a wrestling program, but he also just wanted to build an actual TV show. This is entertainment. Thing everybody says. Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, there's such a disconnect. They make Raw. First of all, Raw being 3 hours is goddamn brutal. It's never should. Any of these wrestling shows shouldn't be 3 hours. Pay-per-view should be 3 hours and done at the most.
Not 6.
But
and on Saturday, why is it on Sunday night?
Mm-hmm.
Now it makes no sense. Now it makes zero sense. If your idea Sunday night was because you needed the buy rates and all that shit, now it makes no sense because you
Don't
just
need that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
buy the network.
Or put it on at 6, not like 9 or something like that.
Right. Let us go to fucking Barnacles and eat wings and watch the goddamn pay-per-view.
Yes. Good times, actually. Good times.
Well, nothing beats the amount of gambling we did on the Royal Rumble.
Who was the one that had just referencing back, sorry to get off topic, but somebody had Santino and then he got eliminated?
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about, right? Where he hit under the ring and he came out, and then I think Alberto eliminated him.
There was a couple of years where my guy came in 3rd and 2nd, and I just wanted to die. When we finally got Patrick involved in it, he got Apollo Crews 3 years in a row.
Yep, and now he's the U.S.
Really?
champ.
And I finally won last year. I was a part winner last year. No Apollo Crews, so I got. Once I never got Apollo Crews, I knew I could win. I was good. I was confident.
Plus, the way we do it now too is obviously there's the 2 rumbles, the male and the female, and then we have the 2 stakes. We have like the $1 buy-in one, and then the higher one. So you can walk in with $20 and have a boatload of fun with the gambling aspect.
And that's why we did it that way, just because. But you know what's sad? I mean, it got to the point where the majority of the people who were coming for the Royal Rumble show needed that gambling because the shows weren't that good.
Yeah, I wish you could do it on Saturdays, though, because as a person who doesn't drink, I would be interested on Saturday nights to watch you guys get a little tipsy, and then somebody just start throwing out stupid bets, and somebody goes, yeah, Naya's going to botch this. $10, deal.
That's happened. That's happened. There's been some side bets.
Sir, you're referencing a Corey Bryson moment, I believe, is what's happening right there.
Sitting there with my popcorn, just enjoying that more than the pay-per-view, just watching that.
He would make bets. You could bet him anything. And during WrestleMania, you could sit there silent for 20 minutes and somehow still win $5 from him.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Look at you and be, I bet you $1 Bret Hart comes out. No, he's not. Sure.
And for just real quick, for our new listeners, please go listen to the gambling episode. You can find it on Spotify and Buzzsprout. Look up Ruin Podcast.
So much gambling episode without me. What the heck?
I had my buddy Marty come on, who used to be the slots manager at Hard Rock.
Okay, he could take my place. It
was like talking to Ace the whole time. It was
that's insane.
To get back on topic, Mac, I don't mean to take over, but I wanted to I actually wanted to ask the question: what was the first pay-per-view you guys actually remember watching or seeing? Actually, as like a pay-per-view, not like tape trading or anything like that.
Oh.
I'm interested to hear Patrick's answer because
Patrick
usually stuff I've heard he watched.
I've done some. Well, I did like the closed circuit things they used to do in Charlotte, like the NWA, the closed circuit. They do the same show over. I got to see one of those. VHS started getting me into it. My friend of mine had free satellite. He'd ripped off satellite. So we watched all the pay-per-views, and I believe the first one was the WWF. I want to say Survivor Series for some reason. I remember the Rockers. It goes way back. I'd have to get the exact one. I mean, I know as soon as I see the card, I'll recognize it. But it goes.
The one where the Undertaker makes his debut?
That's
no,
91,
way before that. Way before that.
Oh, before that. So you're probably
he got everything free and on replays too. So anything we wanted to go watch, and like I said, people had the VHSs. Like I would get NWA, basic taped. And people were just trading around VHSs, old ass rewind, damaged copies, but you just watched as much as you could. Now, this is, of course, to our listeners before the internet. We are old, so we had to do what we could do. And we didn't have many shows come through Roxborough unless it was the National Guard Armory, like low budget ones. So you had to drive to Charlotte or Raleigh or something like that to see a real show.
Yeah, I saw an MSG house show when I was a kid, a little kid.
Did you really?
It was Hogan. It was Hogan and Duggan, and my uncle, God rest his soul, told my father, "Oh, I'll take him." And my father's like, "No, I'm going to go with you guys." And he goes, "Oh, these are our seats down here." And we were probably 7 rows off the ring. And then we watched the first match, and then the guys who were supposed to sit in those seats came. So we goes, it was the wrong section. So we went back a section. Those guys came back from the snack stand. We ended up in the nosebleeds.
Matt, what about you? First pay-per-view?
But my first pay-per-view was my friend Chris. I was at his birthday party. He had a birthday party sleepover, which I don't know how it worked because we all got the Royal Rumble where Ric Flair won.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think if that was a Battle Royale or
No,
if
that was
Rumble.
I remember that
was a Rumble.
That was definitely Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
Winner of the Rumble was WWE champion.
So the next day we had off. It had to be like MLK Day or something in January. It must have synced up with when we had a day off because we stayed at his house. And I remember this guy Chris was the biggest Hogan fan.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, Hogan gets eliminated, and it's Flair and Vicious in there. This kid was like religious. He was screaming at the TV. I thought Satan had taken over his body. He was so mad. He hated Sid Vicious with a passion after. I never saw him after that. But Flair won. I remember that. That was an insane.
I think that was 92.
Might have been 92 or
92.
So
Mike,
you remember?
Matt, your first pay-per-view might have been one pay-per-view before mine because my first pay-per-view, another birthday party. It was not a sleepover though, but it was WrestleMania 8, which is funny because it's my first pay-per-view, so I have like these awesome fond memories. Like every single match when it comes on, it's like I have these fond memories. And WrestleMania 8 is always said as being like one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. It was terrible.
Is that the
like,
outside arena one where they're all in like togas?
No, it's the one before that. That was 9.
Okay.
8 was the first one that had the double main event with Sid and Hogan and Flair and Macho Man.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know. I'm going to see if I can get it on here, if it's not going to clear up.
Oh, yeah, there it is. There it is. Yep.
Macho Man's just shaking his fist.
I remember that. That was one of those ones that I just forgot. I was in a video store like eons ago, and I'm going through the wrestling section, and I picked it up, and I know I saw it. I'm like, why don't I remember this one?
So here, Mike, let's see. The Bushwhackers versus the Beverly Brothers opened up the match.
Yeah, as that should have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn Michaels versus Tito Santana. That went 10. That almost went 11 minutes. Undertaker defeated Jake Roberts. 6 minutes and 30 seconds. How fucked up was Roberts in that match?
About 6 minutes worth.
He was just a bit tipsy.
But that's where Bret Hart won the Intercontinental Championship from Piper.
That was reversed the sleeper hold for the pin. I remember seeing that live, and I was just like, that dude is the bomb.
Yep.
I had never, not that I'm like some wrestling historian, but I had never seen somebody reverse a sleeper hold into a pinfall. And like I was a decent Bret Hart fan before that match, and I was like, I think I marked up a few levels after that one.
Yeah.
I think this is where we start seeing a little bit of damage. Big Boss Man, Jim Duggan, Sergeant Slaughter, and Virgil versus the Mountie, the Nasty Boys, and Repo Man. How does an 8-man tag only go 6 minutes? Did they all just drop dead?
You forgot about the intros.
Did Sags get tagged in on that one?
No way. There's no way in hell.
Wait, so I don't get to put somebody's face in my armpit tonight?
Repo Man carried the match.
You're up a creek without a paddle on that.
Yes, this WrestleMania has been repossessed. I'm sorry.
Savage and Ric Flair. That was a good match out of it.
That was good.
And then they needed to cool it off, so they throw Tatanka versus Rick Martel out there.
That was a phenomenal match. I remember. I went to the bathroom for half of it.
Tell me how this match went 9 minutes. The Natural Disasters versus IRS and Ted DiBiase. How did Earthquake or Typhoon work for 8 minutes?
Wasn't that a bit of a program back then? Didn't Money Inc. go against the Natural Disasters like several different times? Yeah. And it's like, have you seen the Natural Disasters? Like one of those guys could kill
Well, Earthquake could go too. He didn't look it. He had a hell of a stamina. Like in the Japanese, his days in Japan, they said he could go. I mean,
everybody talks about Haku being the toughest dude ever, and maybe he is. But dude, go back and look at Earthquake's bio. Dude, Earthquake was a whatever you call it, like there's like a name for the champion in sumo wrestling or whatever. Like he was a legit champion.
Yeah, he was impressive. Owen Hart defeated Skinner in a minute and a half.
Oh, Skinner.
Yeah.
And then Hogan finally beat Sid Justice by DQ.
By DQ, but that's not the important part. That had the biggest pop of like my wrestling career after that, because that's when Warrior came back.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
That was the big moment of that pay-per-view, because like I mean, I'm sure it was quicker than this, but it seemed like Sid Justice was kicking the crap out of Hogan for forever, and the announcers are playing it up, you know, Macho Man's left the building. He can't help Hogan. Who's going to come back and help? And then they cued the Ultimate Warrior's music. And I remember that pay-per-view. It was a long run from the gorilla position.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he was
to the ring. And so this guy comes flying out, and like me and my friends, like, yeah, we marched to the rooftops.
Back in the day, though, when they would sell the fact, like they knew, like somehow the announcer sitting ringside knew which wrestlers had already left the arena. Like they did that like shit all the time. Like, there's
checked in with them.
Macho Man went to his Hertz rental car, and he is definitely 5 miles away. Like,
definitely at a Waffle House right now.
There's no way.
We attacked this pay-per-view, but it still would be better to rewatch that than some of the crap they have right now.
Oh man, better than Backlash.
I mean, I mean, and I can't, like I said, I've given a pass to all wrestling organizations because of the down with the sickness that's been going on. But even before that, before all of this happened, the last year, I mean, my God, I don't remember. This was a couple of years ago. They named a goddamn pay-per-view Great Balls of Fire. Because Vince thought it was funny because it has the word balls in it.
He probably just heard the song and he said, we just got to call it pay-per-view that. And like,
I think I am one that I just think his mind is completely split now, more so than it ever was, because it's a public company now. Like, I think that fact of his company, I think that leads into when he decides to go to the bathroom during the day. Like, this is like a wrestling organization that's a public company. Like, that's just so beyond what any of the regional dudes thought this thing could be way back in the day. So every decision he makes is based on that, I think.
Yeah, and as far as worst pay-per-view ever, I mean, for me, I know we won't talk about it long because it's kind of depressing. Still, the worst pay-per-view of all time is the goddamn Over the Edge, the one where Owen Hart dies, just because Owen Hart dying just sent shockwaves through. Before we get to that, Stanley, what was your first pay-per-view?
For me, it was I vividly remember watching it at my grandmother's house. Actually, it was Survivor Series, I believe, 2003, with it was The Undertaker versus McMahon, the Buried Alive match.
Was that here?
I don't think it was in Tampa. No.
Yeah, I was thinking on the 2002. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, but yeah, that's the main thing I remember from that match is just the idea of The Undertaker getting buried alive, and then obviously he comes back later at Mania to face his brother Kane. Just that, this goes back to what Patrick was talking about, the storyline building. You have Undertaker doing all these little cameos, all these little vignettes, just to say, hey, I'm coming back and I'm going to get you. That being my first pay-per-view, that's the main thing I remember from that. So,
wait, Kane and Undertaker are brothers? Is that what you're saying?
Biological?
This is my brother Glenn.
He's from Spain.
He's from Spain.
Kane defeated Shane McMahon in an ambulance match.
I remember that. What's funny about that? I remember a few Raws before that where he tied him up to the ring post, and then he took the car battery to the family jewels. I was like, what am I? What? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I think the times are off, boys, because it says that Goldberg defeated Triple H, and it went 12 minutes. Was 10 of the
That
men
doesn't sound right.
staring at each other?
Triple H running and, God, I remember that. I'm a big Goldberg guy. I was a mark. When he came to WWE, I knew it was going to be bad. I mean, remember the Brock Lesnar, they're both leaving match, WrestleMania? Everybody's getting booed.
That was my first Mania that I watched, and it was such a hyped match, but then you just hear the crowd obviously everybody knew that they were leaving. Both of them were leaving, and the whole match was just horrible.
God damn internet.
Yeah. For real.
How many do you think there is a picture of like an Apple, like an old Macintosh from the 80s computer in Vince McMahon's office that he just throws darts at, that he just hates technology that much that it just ruins so many of his brilliant ideas?
I mean, that's why they announce like people returning now. They don't even give it a surprise anymore. It's like, hey, by the way, John Morrison's going to be coming back now. Like, great. Why couldn't you just
keep it
under wraps?
They throw Aleister Black and Rey Mysterio off a building. Oh, don't worry, they'll be on Raw tomorrow night.
No, there was a crash pad. There was a crash pad, guys. Yeah, see, they didn't die.
Mike, did you watch that Money in the Bank where they were running through the building?
No, I almost did, and then I was just like, I wasn't feeling it. No,
I want to hear Matt's opinion on this first.
I'm going to say one thing. When Mike and I were in college, Mike had a project he needed to do where he needed to make a short film and a music video. And I dressed up like a priest and played the guitar in it. Mike put more effort in that 3.5-minute music video than they did on a multi-million-dollar pay-per-view.
Okay, yeah, so I thought it was actually pretty entertaining, to be honest with you.
First of all, you want me to solve the biggest problem?
Mm-hmm.
What's her name? The champion, female champion.
Bailey.
Asuka.
Oh, Asuka, Raw champion. Yeah, Asuka.
Mike runs into the elevator, and instead of someone saying, hey, you know what we should do? We should put a little sign on the elevator that says out of order, and then that fixes all the problems. She decides to get in an elevator that never closes. And it goes on forever. It was, I mean, it is what it is, but them falling off the roof and then like them dying and then Dana Brooks falling in the greatest is there's a cameo by Stephanie McMahon and she's obviously not even
there
filmed at her house, and she's like, what are you guys doing? Better clean that up.
And Vince McMahon with the
Vince McMahon cameo, I thought was
we heard about it. Yeah, they wouldn't let him fight. They wanted to have a brawl in his office, but he's worried about that T-Rex skull that he has up there. He was worried they were going to hit it and break it. So he said no fighting.
AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan fight, and they end up in McMahon's office, and they like move the chairs, and he just turns around and he's all upset, and AJ Styles are like
put the chairs back and just like sorry, bye.
Like normal. And I'm like,
get out.
Is there really a championship program with Otis coming up?
Yes.
He did when he won that Money in the Bank match. Yes.
2020 is a fucked up year, my friend.
They're not going to pull Mr. Kennedy and take it away from him. Just to kind of wet your whistle on an Otis build.
I was hoping that like someone he was like either Ziggler or someone he hated got some random title like IC or something like that, and as part of the storyline of him being so pissed off is that he gives up his championship to beat the shit out of somebody. I'm like, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. That I would watch. That's a good storyline. But he's just gonna go up against. Whoever.
Well, you heard about the pool scene, right? That he did with. The whole pool scene they did.
I know what you're talking about, Patrick.
So Zack Ryder got let go. He got furloughed. Yeah. He's been mad and all this. Well, his girlfriend or his fiance works for NXT. WWE called her and said, "Can we use your swimming pool for this whole vignette this whole scene?" And she's like looking weird, and he's like, "What's wrong?" He said, "They're asking to," and it's his house. Like she moved in with him. He said, they're asking to use your pool to do this thing for SmackDown or whatever. And he was like, are you? And of course, she was professional because he's worried about her job too.
Yeah.
She goes, no, we can't do whatever.
Yep.
And ever since then, he has been on I mean, a tyrant. Like, he is ready now to prove, and he's pissed off. And I was like, that shows you how bullshit that corporation could be. I mean,
I actually listened to I'm sure you've listened to his podcast, Patrick, but they did talk about it, and at the time I think he said he was shaking, and the quote is shaking with anger. Like that's how they keep clickbaiting everything to say that that's what happened. But
I saw his wrestling figure thing the other day with the Gabby guy. I don't know if you may watch that. He does action figures and calls himself the Michael Jordan of collecting. But he was like talking about, I mean, he just seemed a little different. Like he was in his happy mood, but you could tell it just after that. So I wish him the best, but that is some.
Look what happens. Look what happens to these guys when they get a fire lit under their ass. Look what Cody Rhodes did. Look what Jericho did. Look what John Morrison did. Look what all these guys did after they got a fight. You know, they get pissed off and they go somewhere.
But who did you just mention there? Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, Zack Ryder.
It's going to be a big fire. It's going to be a big fire.
That's not Chris Jericho.
Hey, if we can't talk about Brutus the Barber Beefcake, don't you talk about Zack Ryder?
Yeah. Matt, you mentioned something about a controversial pay-per-view that was a few years ago.
You know, I remember watching Over the Edge and thinking they need to stop this pay-per-view. Like to Mike was kind of saying before, like we know what's going on. We now know that a human being fell in the ring. So don't pretend like it didn't happen. Everyone in the audience watched it. If they just stopped the pay-per-view and said, listen, we're going to finish this tomorrow night after we figure out what the fuck is going on. There would not have been one wrestling fan in the world that would have disagreed with it. Not one.
Especially with I would let it slide if he had gone to the hospital and you don't know but right. I mean, they knew he was deceased before the next match, or was it during the next match?
During the next match, they announce it. I think they announced it to the thing during the Austin Undertaker maybe, but they knew a match later. So you're right, Mike. Something like that. He was.
I thought it was way more.
I think it was a little bit sooner than that, because I remember watching. I'm sure we've watched the Dark Side of the Ring episode, but I remember JR specifically saying that they literally gave him 10 seconds before they were back on the commentary table, and he had to tell everybody that Owen Hart had passed. And I was just like,
"Yeah, I think
you give that guy much time just to take it in of what happened. Like, why would you?"
I just think that it's ridiculous, and they just.
I was with people that didn't think it was real. It was one of the few pay-per-views I missed. I was at a diner late night. We went out. I came up. I'm at the diner, tired, getting some food at like 2 a.m. or whatever. The news, national news, is saying Owen Hart just died. And I'm like, what the? And they didn't watch wrestling. My friends were like, "What's wrong?" I say, "Dude, one of the wrestlers just died." "Oh, you know that shit's fake, man. That's part of the story." I'm like, "Dude, it's on national news. He's dead." And they were like, "No, there's no way."
Oh man, Vince paid CNN off.
And I'm just sitting there, and they're like, "Why are you so down and sad?" I'm like, "Not because I missed it. Oh, I didn't get to see him fall." I was just like, "Holy shit!" It was crazy.
You know,
just the way it happened too, man. Like that's insane.
And him yelling for people to move below. He was worried about everybody else. I was like, wow.
I just think that definitely turned me off of. I can tell you honestly. After that, I still ended up doing a wrestling radio show at USF, which was the lowest rated show on that network. I think Mike's show had about 10 more listeners.
10? Whew, we would have been paid millions if I had 10 more listeners than you, man. I mean,
I did set the USF record for most hate mail for they said, because everyone got email addresses that year. My God, they flooded my email.
I know the people that were waiting for the elevator in front of the radio station heard our show. Other than those random people, I don't know if anyone actually heard our show.
My God, they hated our shows. I had it Saturday morning. When was your show, Mike? Saturday night?
No, ours was Thursday night, I want to say, because I think it might have gotten moved around to Thursday or Friday, but I want to say we did that show, and then we would as soon as the show was over, we'd hop down to Ybor for the sink or swims.
I think you're right, because I would meet you guys down there, because I always worked Thursday, so I would come down there.
I'm almost positive we did 8 to 10 because I know our show always ended for whatever reason. They never gave us the show time of being on after that time frame where it didn't matter if you cursed or not. Like after 10, they didn't care, but we always got 8 to 10, and I want to say it was Thursday. But
yeah,
anyway.
I think so. I think you're right. Those days were crazy, but I remember doing that show, and just as the show progressed, we were doing wrestling every week. I could feel my enthusiasm for it waning. Like that was the time period, like 2000. Luckily there was a lot of independent stuff going on locally that I kind of, my friend Rob was still into, and I'd go see that stuff with him. But it definitely did wane for quite a bit.
I actually you mentioned indie wrestling. I actually do want to ask, do you guys have any indie wrestling pay-per-views that you guys have seen recently or in the past that maybe stuck with you or anything like that?
Ring of Honor.
Ring of Honor.
I mean, ECW back in the day, of course. Heatwave '98 was amazing. Yep. I was always waiting for somebody to either die or just something crazy show up, but the matches were all entertaining. Recently, a lot of Ring of Honor as far as what they could get out. PCU, whatever, getting electrocuted. He got hit.
PCO.
PCR. He got slammed to a hearse.
Yeah.
The amount of damage that man's taken at his age. I mean, there was great matches too. It wasn't just that, but that's what I've been trying to watch and keep up with.
Yep.
Because New Japan is really not doing anything.
They just came back. I mean, they just started doing their show again, especially now, obviously with no audience, but I mean, they just started broadcasting their stuff again. So, Matt, you have any indie stuff that you've been either older or newer? I mean,
I'm thinking, we used to watch a lot of the ECW ones because my buddy Rob would always want to watch those. So he'd come to my house and we'd usually get those because those were only like $20, $25. Those were like more manageable. But I do remember that there's a great one out there that I've watched clips of. And it was like the Legends. God, it's the Heroes of Pro Wrestling, Legends of Pro Wrestling.
I think it's Legends.
Legends. My God, that is just like that is like a car wreck that I started watching clips from, and I'm like, I can't turn away from this. This is just this is unbelievable.
Like the wrestling version of Faces of Death.
Yes.
So what you're saying is they weren't as mobile as they once were. That's the one with Jake the Snake Roberts before he got DDP Yoga. I mean, it was bad. Like, I saw him wrestle at a Insane Clown Posse event.
Oh my God.
The ref, it was the most embarrassing thing. I mean, it really hit rock bottom. Like,
Jake the Snake is so drunk in there. I watched the clip of it from 20 years ago, and I got drunk. I blew a .08. Let me tell you though, some of the Juggalo Championship Wrestling, I had a couple of the DVDs. They're actually very entertaining.
I was gonna say, I remember watching one over at your place, Matt, and I was again, bar was so low. All right, fine. Let me drink some beers and I'll watch this terrible thing. The wrestling was decent, but their comedic
their commentary.
The show portion, not the wrestling portion.
It was pretty good. I gave them credit. I was laughing out loud several times.
You know why though, Mike? Because they weren't doing their shtick. They were just they were being goofy commentators.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to be the Insane Clown Posse. They were trying to be goofy wrestling commentators. My favorite, well, the one that I think we say almost all the time is Fat Fuck Barrel Boy. He's fat. He's a fuck.
What? What the hell?
So this guy comes out, Stanley. I'll send you the clip. He comes out, and it's like a trash can around. And he must have dodged them, like on payment, or not showed up, no-showed him once or something, because they hate this guy. And they're doing the commentary in a booth later on, so they can say whatever they want. And it goes, here comes Fat Fuck Barrel Boy. He's a fuck, and he's in a goddamn barrel.
Oh my God! The only two gimmicks I didn't watch in the shows. I just remember that they had these two gimmicks. They had a Kid Rock and an Eminem parody. They had Feminem, not Eminem, Feminem, and I believe it was Kid Cock. I believe was his name. both. I believe both are Detroit rappers, so you can see why they would.
Yeah.
They
were chanting cocky.
Haystack show up. He's like 600 pounds. He can barely get to the ring. He has to like crawl up the ring. Violent J starts going, "Oh my God, he's like an angel ascending into heaven."
Well, it's like with the Jake the Snake match. They literally were like, "What the fuck just happened? We don't even know." He just did the DDT. He didn't do it. He just fell. That poor female ref took 2 DDTs from him.
Honestly, there's a moment where I think that all of us would have done this if we were rewatching a video. They show like one of the guys working and one of their friends, and all of a sudden Shaggy just screams, "Hey, there's Brian!" Like that. Violent J goes, "Yeah, there's Brian." Like,
kayfabe, bro, kayfabe.
Like he was so excited to see his buddy. He was like, "Yeah, there's Brian." I forget what his name is. Like, "There's Dan." Like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, those were funny, but they've had, like Mike, like we were saying, I think the fucking hardcore match, they're fucking just smashing. I mean, they're bloody and everything like that.
Again, I mean, if you're specifically going out to digest a wrestling show that is not WWE, that Juggalo Wrestling League or whatever the hell it was called, I was like, hey man, A for effort. I mean, that was
and they were cheap. They were cheap DVDs. They were funny as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, the humor was phenomenal.
Oh my God! But yes, if I will send you Fat Fuck Barrel Boy. He's fat, he's a fuck, and he's in a goddamn barrel.
Well, this is why we're great for AEW, though. Someone who actually has the money to keep it going. Because think of all the companies that have tried to give us an alternative. WWA, XPW.
It's not the Jag's owner; it's his son, right?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he's still paying them. He didn't furlough anybody, which I'll give credit to.
Yep.
Well,
that's the same with New Japan. New Japan was paying all of their wrestlers after everything had been shut down. So, I mean, props to them for taking care of their talent.
Yeah.
Well,
Vince McMahon, are you listening?
Let me tell you guys, this has been a fun, raucous decision. Jesus fucking Christ! Hold on, I'm gonna have to edit this out.
This is why they hated your radio show, Matt.
I'm gonna keep this in to show what a fucking mushmouth can make it in America.
Good job, Matt. We just lost about 2 viewers.
2 viewers. That's 20%. I'd like to
have Nielsen ratings. Are we down in the Nielsen's?
Way down. I'd like to thank Mike Howells, Chris Patrick, and Chris Stanley, OTS, for being on the show today. I'd like to thank the continent of Australia, for which makes up 25% of our listenership. We love you. I cannot wait.
Now, just to follow up, have we heard anything from any Australian fans yet?
No, I haven't heard.
Are we sure it's people and not like 3 kangaroos like watching a monitor?
Hey,
Mike,
everyone in Australia, we are sorry about that comment.
Ruin to go on the road. I
continue to listen to the Ruin podcast.
I swear to God, this is going to turn into like a bad 80s movie where Ruin goes to Australia and one of us gets a bag full of diamonds by accident and then criminals pursue us the whole time.
Hey,
is Australia ruined for you, Matt?
All kidding aside, I love Aussie Man Rules. Those are hilarious.
But however the 80s movie ends, my big scene is when the criminal goes, "Who do you think you are?" or something like that, and I have to say, "I'm Matt Sokalski, and this is Ruined," and then I blow him up or something ridiculous. So I already know how it's going to end. I know that it's going to be a disaster when I go to Australia, but I want to build enough listeners, whatever the hell they are. But yeah, it's incredible, and they're excellent, and they are supporters. Like and I thought, Mike, I was like, oh wait, is it one guy listening? And it's like six different cities in Australia. So I'm like, wow, this is really cool. We've had France, Mexico, Spain, and of course all throughout the U.S.
We appreciate every single person who's listening to this. By the way, thank you guys.
New states that I don't think I've mentioned before: Missouri, Nevada,
Missouri.
I know who's listening in Missouri, by the way.
Yep.
Washington, here comes more hate mail for you, Matt.
Washington, California,
mm-hmm.
a lot of
Florida.
So it's been awesome. What?
Florida.
No Florida listeners. Go.
Florida listeners.
I don't listen to this crap, dude. What are you talking about? And guys, always remember to subscribe to Ruined Podcast on Spotify and Buzzsprout. Just look up Ruined Podcast, and also on YouTube, Ruined Podcast.
This kid is.
You're welcome, Matt.
I am the absolute worst where this kid's the best. Please check out Feed the Geese on SoundCloud.
Thank you. Feed the SoundCloud.com/feedthegeese. We did the theme to the Ruin podcast, guys. The song is called AA. Give it a listen.
Is that a foreign language? What the hell was that? What?
There's one more thing real quick. By the way, you heard it first on the Ruin podcast. Jim Cornette is working for AEW. It is the biggest work in internet history. I'm telling you right now. So when it happens, you heard it here first. Thank you.
God, yeah. I gotta go sit in the editing booth. Okay, everyone.
He's the guy with the tennis racket, right?